Okay, so Diamond Hunter is book 11. I only have 11, 10 fingers. Book 11 of the Jack Lark series, and book 11 out of 11 books. I don't know if there's going to be another one, but I had a kind of an unintended, interesting experiment. I read book one a couple of years back and really liked it. And now I just read book 11. I haven't read the ones in between. And I wanted to know if I would be able to make that leap. If I could read book one and not have read the other nine and then read so I bookend of the series, book one and book 11 of the series. Would I enjoy book 11? Would I understand what was going on? And would I understand how much the character had developed since I was introduced to him, Jack Lark? This is Paul Fraser Collard's um, Jack Lark series. So we're going to get into that. Let's do the intro. Hi, hello, my name is Cody Siengdahl. I am the author that you know. I'm the author of 6 books, all available, or 6 novels, all available on Amazon right now. I also have written 2 nonfiction, but kind of 3. I'm currently working on a novella, which is going to be free and exclusive to my email list. All you have to do is go down in the description below, and you can click on the link to join my email list, and you will immediately get the free Anglian glossary, and eventually you'll get the Underground Railroad Ball, which is the immediate prequel to Rampage on the River. And I gotta say, I'm almost done with chapter 2, and it's turning out to be I think, a very good book. I'm enjoying writing it. Chester E. Newman, if you read my first 3 books, he is the main character in this one. It's one of my favorite characters ever written, and so check it out. All right, let's get on to this. So I want to tell the story first because I have kind of an interesting. This book in particular, and this author, I have kind of an interesting experience with. So I'll start with in the beginning. I when I first started writing, I joined a bunch of Facebook groups. I've since quit them all for reasons I won't go into right now. But I joined a Facebook group that was for historical fiction authors, and it was hosted by Paula Lofting, who I still am Facebook friends with, and I'm friends with Paul Collard too. I think his Facebook name is Paul Collard, but his author name is Paul Fraser Collard. I hope I'm pronouncing his names right. So this was the very early days when I was writing Rampage on the River. And I was asking a lot of questions, just going as I was writing and things were popping up in my mind. I didn't have a lot of mentors. I didn't have a lot of people to talk to. And I would go on there and ask questions, and people would pop in, and including Paula and Paul. And Paul was very kind to me. And Paula, at that time, was a traditionally published author with several successfully published, well thought of books out on the market. And he took the time to answer my questions, and he was very kind to me. I we became Facebook friends, and I also follow his author page. So he has an author page, the Paul Fraser Collard page, and then he's just Paul Collard in his personal, kind of like me. Except my author page is Engdahl House, which is more of the page for my micro publisher than it is for me, because I just figure my Facebook profile is my page, in which all my friends, people who just want to follow me because they like me as an author, my family, all that kind of stuff, they're all on there. I learned that from Dennis. I'm getting way off way off. I learned that from a reporter I once worked with. He goes, I don't have a separate reporter page. I'm just me, and I don't put anything. If you want to be my friend, that's great. I don't put anything. Dennis Ferrier in Nashville, that's what it is. So anyway, um, I liked Paul immediately because Paul is a great guy, very nice guy, very giving and helpful, especially to start first time authors and things like that. Good guy. So when Paul, uh, I decided that I wanted to read. Oh, okay. Let me say one other thing too. Um, I like Paul a lot, and I also noticed that Paul has great branding. And I'm going to go ahead and bring this up now. Is this what I wanted to bring up? Uh, Takes forever. Yeah. So Paul has great, um, great, great branding. These are his books. So the Jack Lark series there's 11 here, and you're gonna notice something as we go through these covers. Okay, I think Paul has the best covers in the business. I honestly, if I could have custom covers made, I'd want something like Paul's. And in fact, Paul's covers were were somewhat behind um, the inspiration for my cover for Rampage on the River and the Perils of Perryville, but I wasn't able to quite do what Paul is doing because first of all, he was going through a traditional publisher who had money to throw at artists. But if you notice, every one of these covers has the main character, but you don't see the main character's face, and that's a good thing because the reader needs to be able to construct what they think the character looks like um, without it being changed by having seen an image. Because I'll say this, like Bernard Cornwell's Sharp series. Sharp is described as having like black hair and maybe blue eyes. I can't remember. But I remember he has black hair. But then Sean Bean played Sharp in some very famous movies back in the 90s. So I don't know about most people, but because of that, every time I read a Sharp book, I have Sean Bean's face in my head and not the guy and not the way he's originally described. So I think it's and I think I've heard this from someone else too, to not put the face of the character on the cover so that the reader can put their own face there. So every one of these covers, he's got um, he's got his back to the camera, and usually, like here he is pulling a weapon. Sometimes there's something crazy happening in front, but usually it's a setting. And I thought I just love the look of these, and so I was really interested. Well, here's his facing forward, but his head's turned away. Uh, and yeah, I love these, and the the idea behind this, at least I think the first few, I don't know if this runs through all of them. It's certainly not there in the end, but the idea was that I heard was that it was somewhere this character was um I think Collard even has somewhere in the description. It's like Jack. Well, it's Jack Lark is the main character, but he's like Richard Sharp mixed with the talented Mr. Ripley. In other words, he's an imposter, and so and all these look and these are great. Like this first book takes place in the Crimean War. The second book is somewhere in India. The third book, I think, also is an Indian. Um, I think the next three books are Indian adventures. Um, this next book is the Battle of Solferino, which is, I believe, in Italy. Then there is, and then he does two Civil War novels, and then this one, I think, okay, this is American Civil War and the Frontier. This is Abyssinia. I don't know where that is, but somewhere in the Middle East. Here's another one. He's in the Nile, and then the last one is Diamond Hunter, which we will get to. And so I thought, oh God, these look great. And this looks like something that not only I'd like to emulate as an author, but also as an avid reader, I'd like to try one of these. So I read a few right around that time. I read um, The Scarlet Thief, and I was immediately what's the word I'm looking for? I was immediately discouraged because it was so good. And I was like, oh wow, I don't know if I can write a book this good. This is fantastic. I would love to be able to write this well. And I will say that I'm happy to say that um, of course, this is subjective, and this is me talking about me, but I feel pretty happy with the books I've written. So I think Paul is still probably miles above me, but I've written books since that I'm very proud of. But I was very like humbled by reading Paul's first book, and that was his first book. The Scarlet Thief was like his first book, or at least the first book of the series, and these are the only 11 books I know of. And he's got a couple of their novella, but as far as I know, he has only published Jack Lark novels. So anyway, it was an excellent book, and the premise, the plot was amazing. So basically, it's about a guy who's a private in a regiment in Britain, and he becomes the an orderly, or what's called a Batman. And a Batman, not the Cape Crusader from the 1930s, but in English military terms, a Batman is like a personal servant to an officer. So Jack Lark is a private in this book. He becomes the servant, a Batman or an orderly, an assistant to a captain. That captain gets a transfer to a regiment that is fighting in Crimea. And so this captain and Jack Lark travel, across Europe to get to Crimea to fight in the Crimean War. Well, along the way, the captain dies. And so Jack Lark has to make a decision. He's got reasons why he can't go back to where the regiment where he was, because there was a lot of trouble back there for him. So he can report to whomever that his captain's dead, or the second option is that he assumes the captain's identity, gets rid of the body, takes the man's clothes and papers. This is 1856, and travels out to Crimea and presents, or where, I can't remember where he goes to, because I feel like they get to a certain place and then they get on a boat and then they travel out to where they're going to start fighting. But anyway, he presents himself as this captain. So here was a guy who was a private who shows up to this new regiment and presents himself as a captain. He's an imposter. And so it's a great nail-biting novel. So it's more than just a war novel. There's also this other conflict in which the character is trying to not be discovered that he is an imposter. Excellent. I've seen this before in the Barry Allen, Barry Lyndon. It was a novel, and then I think it was a novel written like hundreds of years ago. But then it was a movie, Stanley Kubrick, where a British soldier during the 7 Years' War deserts, and I can't remember. He somehow is masquerading as a British officer and then gets found out by Prussians and then gets forced in the Prussian military. And I borrowed a little bit from that story too, especially like the whipping. Oh no, I'm sorry. When Carl gets walks the gauntlet in the Prussian Prince, I got that scene from that movie Barry Lyndon, and there is also a scene where in Mexico, My Love, um, Diego is being whipped. He's a student at a college, and he's you know has to bend over a chair, and a monk is whipping his bare behind with a rod. And I also got that idea from a scene from Barry Lyndon. So Barry Lyndon's a great um, movie. And yes, I take inspiration from all sorts of things, and have no shame in doing so. So anyway, yeah. So the Scarlet Thief is a great novel. It's a lot of fun. It's a nail biter. It's a war novel, but it's also this talented Mr. Ripley in which the main character is an imposter and he's on the verge of being caught and found out at any moment. So highly recommend it. So anyway, years go by, and I never really did a review of that. Uh, I should probably check to see if I have a written review just on Amazon just to help them out because later on I got into this kind of program in which I mean a self-made one where I decided okay as an author as a student of the art I mean I'm not going to just write novels I'm going to read other people's novels to learn from them and also in return I'm going to give everybody a review and share it here and share it on Goodreads and Amazon and everywhere else um, and this has become a process it's become part of my job and I really enjoy it because I've been reading a lot of novels I've been reading faster and faster so I think I've read 14 novels this year so far and I'm really enjoying it so anyway so then years later I'm doing this and a lot of times I'll get novels from the library, or sometimes if I see something for 99 cents, I'll be like, yeah, sure, I'll pick that up and read it and review it and all that. So this book 11, came up for 99 cents, and I can't remember what the price is. Let's see if I can see how much these are normally. 3.99. Yeah, these are fine. Yeah, this seems to be a good. Okay, 4.99 for the out. 2.99 for 4.9. Okay, and the latest one, Diamond Hunter, is 5.99. Okay, so here's pricing. It's right around where I'm doing mine, and if you tuned in last week, I did uh Colin Falconer and Falconer. All his books are 3.99 as well. So the prices are right around there. But anyway, he had Diamond Hunter up for 99 cents. And I was like, okay, well, at 99 cents, I can't say no to that. I like book one. This is book 11. I would have been happy of reading any of Paul's books because I liked one so much and I like Paul so much as a person that so if I saw a book of his for 99 cents, sure, let's snatch it up. Let's see what it's about. So, but this is book 11. So 9 books have happened in between book 1 and book 11. And so I thought that would be an interesting thing to do. And he hasn't published a book since. And I don't know what his plans are. I felt like the way where he left book 11 could go either way. There could be more adventures, or that could be it. So I'll be interested to see. Let me see if I can find the date when this came out, because this has been out for a couple of years. So I don't know what Paul's doing. I don't know if he's got something in the works. He might be taking time to research to either start a new series or prepare to write a bunch more. He, yeah, 13 of October 13th of 2022. So almost 2022. So almost 3 years since he put out his last book. I wonder what's going on with him. I hope everything is well. I hope this is just him putting out, taking some time to do some research to write his next great series. So anyway, let's get into it. I'll say this before I even get started. I really enjoyed it. All right, I'm going to remove that, and then we're going to stop share. Give me all my internal dialogue as I pull up my review. This one this one is a little bit more in depth review too. I try to avoid spoilers. So there are, so I don't want any spoilers in it, but I wanted to get a little bit into some of what goes on that I thought was interesting, his approach. All right, Paul Fraser Collard. I hope I'm saying that right. There's a little bit of the cover. And then, all right, here we go. A deeply textured look into the South African diamond rush of 1871, and a very different kind of adventure for Jack Lark. This is the second book of the series I've read. I've read book 1, A Scarlet Thief, a few years ago. So it was quite a leap to read book 11. It was also an experiment to see if I'd be able to follow the story in Diamond Hunter, having skipped the other 9 books in between. I'm happy to report that I thoroughly enjoyed this book, and whatever I needed to know was contained within its pages. And I'm going to stop right there real quick. I think this is a very important thing in writing a series. And writing a series is a double-edged sword because it can be very profitable because, especially in this genre, readers in this genre expect a series. They don't want one book. They want a series that they can wrap their, that they can sink their teeth into. They're voracious readers, and they're history buffs, so they're intellectuals. They want something they can read for a while. And I think part of this is, I think one of the founding fathers of the modern historical fiction, historical action, adventure, military fiction would be C.S. Forster, who wrote the Horatio Hornblower series. And then 10 years, about 10 years behind him came Patrick O'Brien, who wrote the, I can't remember the name, Jack Aubrey series. And these are both nautical Napoleonic War books, but both of them are both series are I think over 20 books. And they started writing. I can't remember, but I know that someone in Bernard Cornwell grew up reading their books and wanting to write and was influenced by them. And of course, Cornwell has influenced a whole new generation, people like me and Paul, that have followed in his footsteps. So I think that because of those writers, and Cornwell as well, we as readers of this genre are conditioned to read series. So if you're going to write historical, military, action, adventure, you ought to think about writing a series as opposed to standalones. And even last week we talked about Colin Faulkner, his Epic Adventures series, and that's not really a series. It's branded as a series, but all those books are individual standalone novels that are tied together as a series because Faulkner knows that our readers want a series, and so that's a way of kind of straddling the line there. Okay, so where did I leave off? Yeah. Oh, so what I wanted to say, man, I get sidetracked. I drive everybody crazy. What I wanted to say is that, so it's good to write in a series because that's what readers like. And if people like your first book, um, there's a good chance if people like your first book and you're able to maintain that quality, then there's a good chance that they're going to read all your books. So that's great. If you can sell them book one, you're going to sell all your books to them. And um, but the downside of it is that once you start getting deep into your series, you're putting out books that maybe new readers might find interesting, but don't want to have that go back and read everything that came before it. And so I always try to write every book that I try to write every book as if it's the first book the reader has read. My books all kind of carry on a larger overarching story, but I've written them so that if you're only interested in one of the books that's not the first one, you would be able to read that and understand it and enjoy it. And so I was interested to see if Paul did the same thing and if I could pick up book 11 without reading book 9 through 10, if I would enjoy it and understand it. Okay, back to the review. Um, that said, okay, let me back up and read that last line. Yeah, so it was an experience to see if I'd be able to follow the story of Diamond Hunter, having skipped through all the other 9 books. In between, I'm happy to report that I thoroughly enjoyed this book, and whatever I needed to know was contained within its pages. Okay, that said, I am aware that most, if not all, Jack Lark's stories are military adventures where he is a soldier of some sorts. So it was interesting to see him cast in a new adventure as a diamond prospector. Um, the story, no spoilers, I promise, starts with Jack Lark arriving in Port Elizabeth, South Africa, now, and I can't even pronounce the name, what it's called now, with his salt-stained carpet bag in his hand and his pistol at his side. There he meets up with his companion, Anna Baker. Together they must find passage 400 miles inland to the diggings at Detroit, now called Kimberley, buy a claim and start digging. This is a long, arduous process, but just as things go well, things go terribly wrong, and Jack Lark must once again fight his way out of trouble. Now, I could have left the description there, but I wanted to go deeper into the description because I feel like there was something interesting that Paul did that at first I wasn't quite sure if it was a good idea, but then once I got deeper into the book, it made sense to me. And this is what it is. The story has what I believe a deliberately slow start. We follow the two as they hire an oxen train, find fellow passengers to help with the cost, then make the month-and-a-half long journey to the diggings. This is where we meet the rest of the cast and plant the seeds of the main conflict of the story. There's the shady Australian, whom we meet in the midst of taking a beating for an alleged theft. There's the sullen youth from London, the jolly, aptly named Mr. Goodfellow, and a pair of brothers whose mischief causes the first conflict with the standoffish Boers who are sharing their adventure. Once at the diggings, our author Paul Fraser Collard takes us through the grueling process of securing a 30 by 30-foot claim and then digging and sieving day after day as Jack Lark's hands blister and bleed in search of a diamond big enough to make it all worth it. I think it's to impress upon the reader the sacrifice that it takes to find success in this dusty, desperate place. But that's only half the story. Once the slow fuse finally meets the powder keg, everything goes to hell. All those characters and subplots that have been building come to play in a nonstop knockdown drag out, no prisoners battle that will take up the rest of the book. It's full of twists, turns, and surprises. At one point, it's like, how much can this poor guy take? Okay, that's Laura. Let me just real quick text her back. Um, Let me just give her the thumbs up. Laura's coming over for dinner tonight. Um, yeah, at one point I was like, how much can this poor guy take? Diamond Hunter is a great adventure, well worth the read. Collar is very descriptive of places like Port Elizabeth and Detroit, as well as the workings of the diggings. He's obviously done his homework. I especially liked the descriptions of the weapons and how they work. This was also an interesting look at the growing tension between the old Dutch Boers and who had been in South Africa for generations, and the newer British colonialists or colonists, which eventually erupted in the famous Boer Wars of the late 19th century. Having read and enjoyed the bookends of this series, I'm confident and excited about reading. I'm confident and excited about reading any of the other books in the interior. I think you could pick up any of Collard's books and enjoy them on their own, but Diamond Hunter is certainly a gem worth digging into. Get it? Check out Diamond Hunter here. Of course, this is this is on my, even though I post these reviews on Goodreads and Amazon, I then do a review on my own blog so that I can, first of all, draw people to my blog and thus me. But also, I like these embedded previews that I'm able to do with WordPress. So there's a preview there of Diamond Hunter that you can read. And wait a minute. Oh, I forgot to put my own novel in here. Okay, I'll have to fix that once we're done. So I will say this. Let me take that. Now that we've been through the review, I'll tell you some. I'm always going to give people 5-star reviews. If I don't like the book, then I'm just not going to say anything or review it. And just because I know how important those stars are to me as an author, I'm never going to give, because the amount of stars affects the overall average. And if you dip below 4 stars average, you're in trouble, because the algorithm stops showing it, suggesting it to people, and you get lost in the rankings. So you get buried, and no one's going to see your book. So I don't want to undercut, or I don't want to pull the rug out from under any other author. So I'm always going to help them bolster their average. I mean, there's enough people, especially someone like Paul Collar, who's got hundreds of reviews, that I'm not going to tip the balance by me giving them a 5. And there's plenty of people giving them, 1, 2, 3-star reviews. All Paul's books are over 4 stars, so he's in good shape. Nor am I going to disparage another writer or anything like that, or critique him. I will say with this book that at first I was maybe a little confused, because in the Scarlet, and I learned from Paul. And one of the things I learned, and I can't remember if Paul told me this directly or if he wrote this in a blog post, or I can't remember where I learned this, but I read The Scarlet Thief, which is book 1. And it starts right in the middle of a battle. It starts with the character Jack Lark. He's a captain. He's in the middle of a battle at Crimea, and things are looking, all hell's breaking loose. Things are looking pretty dire. And then the character is like, it's a third person narrative, but the character is like, oh, I can't believe what's going on. And just a year ago, I was nothing more than a lowly private back in England, and then the next chapter is him back in England. The beginning of the story where he's a private and then becomes an aide to a captain and eventually takes that captain's identity and goes to Crimea. And then at some point in the book, you catch up to that point where you started in that battle, and then you see how that battle turns out. And I did that in my third book, Blood for Blood at Nashville, where I start the battle of Fort Pillow, stop it, and go all the way. And at the first chapter is the battle, the beginning of the battle of Fort Pillow, and then chapter 2 flashes back 14 months prior to Detroit, and then we follow Francis and Elijah and their journey from Detroit all the way up to fighting the battle. So I learned that from Paul, and Paul had said that when he originally wrote the book, he had written it in a very linear fashion in which it starts with Jacques Larc as a private in England and takes it through this whole process of him becoming the Batman for a captain, traveling with that captain to Crimea and taking on that captain's identity, and then becoming showing up at Crimea, pretending to be a captain, and then getting involved in this adventure. And when he turned that manuscript into his editor, the editor came back and said, I think it would be better for you to start on action. And so to take this action you've written here of this battle and start with that and then go back. And so Paul tells that story about how he learned that. And this is nothing new. It's called the Media Res, and it's been going on ever since I think Greek tragedies. The Greeks wrote stories this way. So you start Star Wars famously is this way, because Star Wars starts with episode 4. So the first trilogy is Luke up to blowing up the second Death Star and destroying the Empire, and then episodes 1, 2, and 3. And even when I was a kid and watching the Star Wars movies, the first 3 movies come out as they did, we understood that there was going to be 3 that were supposed to take place prior and 3 that were going to take place afterwards. And that's called the Media Res. It's a very old, it goes all the way back to the Greeks. So that was great. So when I started reading the Diamond Hunter, I was saying to Laura, I feel like he's almost forgotten the lesson that he had learned before he when he sent his first manuscript to his publisher because it doesn't start on action and it's a slow burn. And why would he do that? Now this is book 11. I have not written 11 novels. I've written 6. I plan to write 11 novels. The series I'm writing right now is either going to be, there's going to be the final book of the series. If things go the way I plan, will be my 11th novel. It's just that the next novel I write, I'm not sure if I'm going to make that a numbered part of the series, a numbered addition to the series. So I don't know if that's going to be book 7 or if I'm going to have it as a standalone that is that's connected to the series but not numbered. See what I mean? And I think that's the route I'm going to go. But that's another thing to talk about later. So so I'm sure he's done all sorts of different things with the other 10 novels or the other 9 novels that I didn't read. So I thought it was interesting that there was no real big, nothing major was happening like in the first part of the novel, the first act, I would say. It's really just a lot of process. It's good. There's certainly tension and there's a little bit of action that happens, but not like he did with the Scarlet Thief. But then I started realizing something as like the first part of the book, I would say would be like Jack arriving in Port Elizabeth, him meeting, I can't remember the Australian's name, Clark, meeting Clark, um, who is kind of an unsavory character, not quite sure if he's someone you can trust, and having and meeting up with the woman. I already forgot her name. Baker. What was her name? Doesn't matter. I think she is a love interest from a previous novel, who they must have met in a previous novel, and now they're together, and they've met here in Elizabeth, Port Elizabeth, with this plan of they're going to go hunt for diamonds, and so they have to. They get this Australian to be like their guide because he's been out there and he's familiar with it. So they get him to kind of sign on as a kind of a partner maybe, in return of him kind of helping them with like, here's what you do, here's how you dig, here's how you sift through the dirt. They need someone that can help them get started, and then they have to find a way out there. It's 400 miles inland, and so they find a guy like an auction train, but it's really expensive. So they have to find other people to um, uh, to share the cost of it. And so uh, the journey out there is a month and a half. And you spend quite a bit of time on that journey, several chapters on the road out there. You haven't even started digging yet, but but having read it, I understand it much better now because you're meeting characters who have signed on to ride out there with them, and um, and some of which will be adversaries, and some of the seeds of that adversarial of that conflict are happen on the road, which is very interesting. And I will say, I mean, I don't think this is a big spoiler. Um, there's going to be conflict with the Boers. The Boers are Dutch. The basically the Boer South Africa. The Boers were Dutch, and some were French, but predominantly Dutch Protestants who colonized South Africa in the 1700s, maybe in the 1600s, and then had been there long enough to even create their own language called Afrikaans, which may be a pidgin or a Creole of Dutch that has been away from Holland for several hundred years, mixed with native um, African language to create this. There is a language today called Afrikaans, and that's what this language is. So I don't know the history very well, but at some point, Britain gets control of South Africa or parts of it and starts colonizing. So there is conflict between the old Dutch Boers and the newer English colonizing that will eventually spill into the Boer. There were two Boer Wars. I think the first one is in 1880. So this takes place about 9 or 10 years before the first Boer War. And so I understand that a lot of that slow burn was to kind of get you to understand these characters and to set the chess table so that when all hell breaks loose, all this starts, because all these little ribbons and all these little conflicts and side stories start coming all at once. And it's really something when it does. And then the other thing is that once they get to, it's called Dutoit. And once again, it was a French name that evolved by the time that Jack Lark gets out there. It's now a town called Kimberley in South Africa. And after you've been taken on that long journey, Paul takes you through the grueling and tedious process of working the lot, and um and you he spends a lot of time with Jack working his claim, and just how tedious it is, and how hard he works, and how much he toils, and how much his hands bleed and blisters and all that. And I think the reason to do that, and it makes sense now that I read the book, is that you have to go through that to appreciate the success that happens. And I don't want to give too much away, but it wouldn't mean anything if they showed up out there and were immediately successful. Um, and the MacGuffin wouldn't really have the same kind of weight if he didn't literally, spend blood, sweat, and tears finding it, and you as a reader going through that with him to appreciate why, when the shit hits the fan, why it's such a big deal. And it does almost immediately. There's very little time to celebrate when, um, all those little things come into play. And also imagine this: your your like, South Africa is a little bit of the Wild West at this point, right? Like, you have natives, you have the Boers who resent your um, your um, encroachment on their colony. It's lawless. You're 400 miles away from the coast, and with very little law. There's no police, there's no courts. There's a bunch of desperate people out there working their own claims, digging in the dirt, trying to find diamonds. And then all of a sudden, you have something that is of unbelievable, incredible value. And you now have to find a way to take that thing and leave with your life and get past all these desperate, greedy people, and to try to hide that thing. And this is where everything goes. And I'll tell you, the like I said, I feel like the book was slow to start, but the investment is worth it because you understand the sacrifice to get to that point, and so why you don't want to easily give it up, and b, why all these things are now happening, and all these things that were set up on the long journey out there and during the digging are now coming to bear all at the wrong time. And I will tell you, like, the end, like, reading the I would say probably this, I'm always trying to figure out where the acts are. I think first act is the beginning of the book all the way to, like, the success. I think second act is the success, all the way up to, like, the character's darkest moment of the soul. That's language from the famous hero's journey uh, structure of storytelling, where somewhere, at the end of the second act, beginning of the third act, the hero hits that point. I gotta tell you, I don't know where that point is because there are several candidates of what is the darkest hour of the soul, where Jack Lark, um, I mean, takes a beating in this, but yet, like, him getting out of, like, awful situations makes sense and is well set up and well executed. So, and there was at a point where I kept thinking, like, okay, clearly this is where we're gonna wrap up the book. Like, this, like, whatever he's doing now, this is gonna be it. And then that ends in absolute failure. And, like, my God, how is this gonna end? And how much more abuse can this guy take? So, So the ending was satisfying, and like I said, I felt like this is book 11. It came out, what did we say, 23, 22, October of 22. Let me see if I can check it real quick. And Paul had been writing. I hope he's okay. Now that I think about it, I mean, I'm thinking about this now live, but this came out in October of 2022. So, and I don't see, at least on Amazon, anything new from him. So I wonder what's going on. I feel like he was quite regular with these releases. I think the first one came out in 2014, maybe, and the last one came out in 2022. So he wrote 7. I don't know. Who knows? Um, but I felt like the end left room for another novel, or I mean, there was no cliffhanger, so there was nothing like um, a setup for another novel, but there was a suggestion that there could be another one, and there's also a suggestion that maybe maybe it ends here. I don't want to give too much away from there. So that's it. That's my review of Paul Collard's uh, uh, Diamond Hunter. So I have read book 1 and book 11. I've read the bookends of this series. There are 11 books. There are 9 in between, if I'm doing the math right. I can tell you this: having read both 2 of them, I'm confident to say that if you picked up any of the books in the series, that you would probably like it. What is interesting is there was very little that you needed to know from previous novels. I got the um, uh, sense that the woman was someone um, that the romance had happened in a previous novel, and now they're together on this adventure. Uh, there there wasn't a whole lot of needed to know from previous novels. However, the character is very introspective in this one, and you have him recalling adventures from previous novels that isn't really necessary for you to understand the plot, but it's just the character being introspective. Like, I should be able to do this. I was able to do, to do this adventure and do that adventure. So this, I should be able to do this too. There's a little bit of that happening with the character, some nostalgia for his previous novels. But what was I do think was interesting is that this one was not a war novel. It wasn't a military novel. It was where, and it wasn't a novel in which he was an imposter. It was just an adventure as a civilian diamond prospector. Okay, so we'll wrap it up. Laura's going to be here pretty soon. What's happening with me? I am in the midst of writing my novella. I don't know how many words, not much. I'm probably about 5,000 words into it. I don't want it to be more than 40. I'm thinking 20 to 40,000. Honestly, the shorter the better. I don't know how long it's going to take me to write it because I don't know how much I'm going to expand it as I go. I am almost 2 chapters into it. I'm very happy with the way it's coming. So we'll see about that. I am tomorrow. Paul and I are playing at Traveler's Rest. I really wanted to form a relationship with Traveler's Rest, and this is the beginning of it. I am going to be doing my talk, a brief history of American Civil War through fiddle tunes, for I think a school group at 12:30, and I don't know if that's open to the public or not. That's Paul and me. Paul is a banjo player. I'm a fiddle player. We're going to be playing back there again in October, and that was a gig that I used to do with NOTSPA, and I always kind of wanted to steal that gig. NOTSPA is the National Old Time String Band Association, and that was like a loose association of jammers that would get together and jam. They're still together, but they had like a performance group, and the performances were always like treated like jams, where like anybody and everybody would show up, and people would come late, and it was hard to do a professional gigs for this. So I always wanted to get the Travelers Rest gig for my group that I could control and keep it down to, a group that we rehearsed together, that we had a set list, that we treated more like a professional gig. Well, during um, during COVID, NASPA gave up all their gigs and hadn't really worked to get them back. So Travelers Rest, actually, the guy from Travelers Rest stumbled upon Paul and I playing at Master Station and asked if we would come and play at Travelers Rest, and we're like, sure. So now we are, and we got 2 gigs with them, one of which was the same gig I used to do at NASPA a long time ago. And then also Saturday, June 14th, we were going to do 1 gig, and then that got canceled. So Danny up at the Robertson County History Museum, they're doing some fundraiser, and he asked if we would come and play in the morning. They have another band in the afternoon, but he asked if we'd play 10 to noon, and offered to let me set up a table and sell books. And so, yeah, so that is open to the public. If you want to hear me play, I'll be playing from 10 to noon. And then if you want to buy a book, I'm planning to spend there the whole day there. So come by and get a book, and I'll sign it for you. If you've already bought a book and you want me to sign it, I'll sign it. Or if you just want to come by and say hi, I'd love to see you. That's it for right now. As far as the cancer, I'm working on, as far as I know, I'm done with the treatment, so we don't know if we've knocked it out, but we think we have. I'm not quite back to eating full, but I just had a session with my swallow therapist today, so I'm eating like yogurt and soup, and she wants me to, like, bisque style soup. She wants me to start working on like soft foods that I can squish. So I'll be working on that. So that's coming along. And she is interested in my books. She bought Rampage. She says she's going to read it soon. So I'm excited to hear about what she thinks. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Hey, I got it under an hour this time. That's great. Love you guys. Oh, what am I reading now? Let's see if I can pull it up here easily, because I'll do it on my phone. I bought a box set of novels, more nautical adventure novels, and the writer, I've never heard of him, but well reviewed, meaning he has lots of reviews, like hundreds, and they're all very good. Let's see here. Yeah, I'll put my Kindle, and let's see if I can get to the. All right, we'll put Okay, John Drake is his name. He switched names. He wrote the first few novels under one name and then republished them under a different name. So now he's John Drake, and it's the Complete Fletcher Adventures. And this is along the lines, I believe, of like Patrick O'Brien or C.S. Forrester. Like there's I don't know if you can see, but there's like a picture of a sailing boat on the cover. There it is. And I think it's a guy who gets press ganged in the beginning and ends up, being a sailor and going on all these adventures. So I wanted to start reading these things because after I'm done with the novella, I'm going to start writing Flash James, which is going to be a nautical adventure. So that's I'm not going to read all 7 in a row. I'm going to read the first novel, which is, I believe, called, let's see if I can pull that up easily. My posts. Currently reading Fletcher's Fortune, which is the first of those 7 novels. I think I'm going to read one of those novels and then read something else and then read the next one. So I'm going to break up the 7 with in-betweeners, unless I'm so into it that I want to read it all the way through, which I doubt. Not that it's not good. It's just I don't know if I have that kind of willpower to read 7 books in a row of the same guy. So anyway, that's what I'm working on. I don't think I'll have a review ready for that. I've been kind of on a stream of reading a book on a week and doing I think 3 reviews in a row. So we'll see what I do my talk on next week. But until then, I'll see you guys. If you're a reader, keep reading. Of course, I am. And if you're an author, keep writing. Oh, I did this backwards. If you're a writer, keep writing. If you're a reader, keep reading. And please, if you have authors out there that you want to help, that you really care about, give them some stars. We need it on Goodreads, but more importantly, on Amazon. So as many stars as you can give us, and hopefully 5. And if you can write a couple lines, like, hey, you don't have to write something as extensive as I did. It could be like, hey, I really like this book. Couldn't put it down. That's it. Anyway, I love you guys. Take care. I will see you next week with another video.